A dog refuses to let anyone near, growling, shaking, standing guard over something clutched in a boy's hands. When the staff finally look closer, one man screams, "Call 911!" But what lies behind that moment is darker than anyone expects. A storm rages outside. A terrified boy is half-conscious in a truck, and the dog won't move, as if guarding a secret too dangerous to touch. The woman who dares approach senses it. This isn't just an injured animal. It's a warning. Then, strange things start happening. The sheriff's threats, a clinic fire, and clues pointing to something far bigger than a simple rescue. The dog seems to know more than any human there, as if he's protecting the only person who can uncover the truth. Why would a trained animal risk everything to shield one stranger? What did that boy really have in his hands? And who's willing to kill to keep it hidden? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The storm hammered against the windows of South Fork Animal Clinic like angry fists. Tamsin Doyle glanced at the clock on the wall, 11:45. Just 15 more minutes until her night shift ended. Lightning flashed, illuminating the empty waiting room in stark bursts while thunder rolled overhead. She was wiping down the metal examination table when she heard it, the distinct sound of claws scrambling on the linoleum floor. Her heart jumped as a massive form burst through the clinic's entrance, bringing the howling wind and rain with it. A German shepherd stood in the doorway, its fur matted with blood and rain. Its teeth were bared in a snarl, but something in its eyes made Tamsin pause. 20 years of working with animals had taught her to read their body language. This wasn't aggression. It was desperation. "Dr. Pike!" she called out, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "We need you out here." Through the glass doors behind the dog, she could make out the dim shape of a pickup truck, its front end crushed and listing to one side. The shepherd's eyes never left her, but its posture screamed protective rather than threatening. Dr. Rowan Pike emerged from the back office, his wire-rimmed glasses slightly askew. "Good Lord," he breathed, taking in the scene. "Tamsin, don't—" But she was already moving, speaking in low, soothing tones. "Hey there, big guy. It's okay. We're here to help." The shepherd's growl softened, though its muscles remained tense. Tamsin could see now that most of the blood on its coat wasn't its own. "Someone's in that truck," she said, already heading for the door. The rain hit her like needles as she stepped outside, Dr. Pike close behind her with a flashlight. The shepherd followed, whining now, leading them to the passenger side. The beam of the flashlight revealed a young man, barely more than a boy, really, slumped against the window. His wrists were bound, with plastic zip ties, angry red marks where they'd cut into his skin. His face was bruised, but he was breathing. "Get the bolt cutters from the surgical kit," Dr. Pike ordered, already trying to open the door. It groaned but gave way. The teenager's eyes fluttered, barely conscious. His hands were clenched into tight fists. Tamsin ran back inside, her shoes squeaking on the wet floor. When she returned with the tools, Dr. Pike was checking the boy's vital signs. "Pulse is thready," he muttered. "He's in shock." The zip ties fell away under the bolt cutter's sharp edges. As they worked to assess his injuries, the boy's fingers slowly uncurled. Something fluttered to the truck's floor. Small rectangular patches that made Dr. Pike freeze mid-motion. He snatched one up, holding it close to the flashlight. "These are fentanyl patches," he said, his voice tight, "and they're stamped with Valley View Medical Center's logo." His head snapped up, face pale in the storm's darkness. "Call 911. Now!" Tamsin fumbled for her phone with shaking hands, but her eyes were drawn to the German shepherd. It had stopped growling, and now stood guard, alert and watchful as the rain continued to pour. The dog had brought them here, had known exactly where to find help. The dispatcher's voice crackled through her phone as she reported their location and the situation. Behind her, she could hear Dr. Pike talking softly to the semi-conscious teenager, trying to keep him stable until help arrived. Lightning split the sky again, and in that brief, brilliant moment, Tamsin saw something that made her blood run cold. Fresh tire tracks in the mud of the parking lot, cutting away into the darkness. Whoever had done this to the boy might still be close by. The German shepherd's ears perked up, and a low growl rumbled in its chest. Tamsin moved closer to the truck, her heart pounding. Dr. Pike was focused on the boy, checking his pupils with a pen light. "How's he doing?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "He's starting to come around," Dr. Pike answered, worry lines deep in his forehead. "But these patches, this is serious, Tamsin. This isn't just some random assault. Someone was using this kid to move drugs." The teenager stirred, trying to speak. His words came out slurred but urgent. "They'll come back. They always come back." Tamsin heard sirens in the distance, growing closer. The German shepherd pressed against her leg, its fur still dripping but its presence somehow reassuring. She placed a hand on its head, feeling the strong skull beneath her palm. "Help is coming," she said, as much to herself as to the boy and the dog. "We've got you now. You're safe." But even as the words left her mouth, she knew this was just the beginning. The storm raged on, thunder drowning out the approaching sirens, and somewhere in the darkness, tire tracks led away into the night, tracks that told of dangers yet to come. The German shepherd's alertness never wavered, and Tamsin found herself drawing strength from its steady presence. Whatever was coming, whatever this night had set in motion, she knew she couldn't simply stand aside. This wounded boy and his brave dog had chosen their clinic for a reason, and now they were all part of something much bigger than a stormy night shift at a small-town animal clinic. Red and blue lights began to flash against the clinic's windows, and Tamsin could hear car doors slamming through the rain. Dr. Pike straightened up, his face grim but determined. "Whatever this is," he said quietly, "we're in it now." The German shepherd looked up at her with intelligent eyes, as if confirming this simple but profound truth. Tamsin nodded, both to the dog and to herself. Sometimes courage meant simply being there when someone needed help, even if that help brought complications and dangers of its own. As the first police officers approached through the rain, Tamsin stood her ground beside the truck, one hand still resting on the shepherd's wet fur. The night shift might be over, but something else, something both terrifying and necessary, was just beginning. The wail of sirens gave way to an uncomfortable silence as Sheriff Boyd Merritt's cruiser pulled into the clinic's parking lot. His boots splashed through puddles as he approached, each step deliberate and heavy with authority. The rain had lessened to a drizzle, but lightning still flickered in the distance, casting strange shadows across his stern face. "What's the situation here?" he demanded, his hand resting casually on his belt near his holster. His gaze fixed first on the German shepherd, then on the trembling form of the teenager being examined by the EMTs. Dr. Pike stepped forward. "We found this young man in need of immediate medical attention. He was—" "That's Elias Trent," Sheriff Merritt cut in, his voice hardening. "He's been reported for theft from Valley View Medical Center." He turned to the deputies who had arrived with him. "Search the vehicle." The German shepherd's growl deepened as one of the deputies moved closer to Tamsin. She felt the dog press against her legs, positioning itself between her and the approaching officers. Sheriff Merritt's hand tightened on his holster. "That dog is dangerous property," he declared, eyes narrowing. "Probably stolen, too, just like everything else this kid's taken. We'll need to impound it." "He's not dangerous," Tamsin protested, her voice stronger than she felt. "He brought Elias here for help. He saved him." The sheriff's laugh was cold. "Ma'am, that animal is evidence in an ongoing investigation, and from where I'm standing it looks mighty aggressive." He nodded to one of his deputies. "Get animal control out here. If that dog can't be contained safely, we'll have no choice but to put it down." Tamsin's heart raced as she crouched beside the shepherd. In the harsh glare of the police lights, she noticed something behind its ear, a distinctive scar that spoke of professional training, not abuse. The pattern was familiar somehow, tugging at a memory she couldn't quite grasp. The dog turned its head slightly, amber eyes meeting hers. In that moment, Tamsin felt a connection that went beyond the chaos of the night. Something that reminded her of watching her mother work with search and rescue dogs years ago. "Sheriff," she tried again, "this dog is highly trained. Look at the marking behind his ear. That's not from fighting or abuse. He's protecting because that's what he was taught to do." "Miss Doyle," Sheriff Merritt said, his patience clearly wearing thin, "step away from the animal. That's not a request." Two deputies were already pulling Elias from the truck. The boy's eyes were clearer now, filled with fear as they locked onto Tamsin's face. "Don't let them," he started to say, but one of the deputies gave him a rough shake. "You've got bigger problems than a dog, son," the deputy growled. Dr. Pike stepped forward. "Sheriff, the boy needs medical attention. Those zip ties—" "Will be documented at the hospital before he's processed," Merritt interrupted. "This is now a criminal investigation. The dog goes to the pound, and everyone here needs to clear the scene." Tamsin felt the shepherd trembling against her legs. Not with fear, but with tension. Every muscle in its powerful body was ready to act, yet it held its position, showing remarkable restraint. This was no dangerous animal. This was a highly trained partner who had chosen to trust her. As the EMTs loaded Elias into the ambulance, Tamsin made her decision. While Dr. Pike was arguing with the sheriff about proper medical procedure, she slowly backed away, guiding the shepherd with gentle pressure against its flank. The dog moved with her, silent and alert, understanding the need for stealth. The clinic's storage room was around the corner, its door partially hidden by shadows. Tamsin opened it quickly, whispering, "In here, boy, quick and quiet." The shepherd slipped inside without hesitation. Tamsin's hand found the old nameplate on its collar, barely legible in the dim light. "Hawker." "Hawker," she whispered, and the dog's ears pricked forward. "Stay quiet, I'll be back." She closed the door just as Sheriff Merritt's voice rang out. "Where's that dog? And where's Miss Doyle?" Tamsin hurried back around the corner, trying to look casual. "Sorry, Sheriff. Nature called. The dog ran off while I was inside, headed that way toward the woods." She pointed in the opposite direction of the storage room. Merritt's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but a call from one of his deputies distracted him. They'd found something else in the truck, and soon the sheriff was barking orders about evidence collection and search parameters. Tamsin stood in the rain, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. She could feel the weight of her choice settling around her shoulders, the first step down a path that defied authority and procedure. But when she thought of Hawker's intelligent eyes, of Elias's fear, and of that strange, familiar feeling the dog stirred in her memory, she knew she couldn't have chosen differently. Dr. Pike caught her eye as the sheriff's vehicles began to pull away. His expression was unreadable, but he gave her the smallest of nods before turning back to his paperwork. Tamsin breathed a little easier, knowing she wasn't entirely alone in her decision. The storm was moving on, but its consequences were just beginning to unfold. In the storage room, Hawker waited patiently, trusting her as she had trusted him. Together, they had taken the first step into something bigger than themselves, a stand against injustice that would demand more courage than Tamsin knew she possessed. For now, though, she had done what she knew was right. She had protected someone who needed protection, even if it meant standing against the very authorities meant to uphold justice. As the last police car pulled away, Tamsin felt the weight of her wet clothes and the weight of her choice, and stood straight under both. The storage room was dimly lit, but Tamsin could see Hawker's wounds clearly enough. The German Shepherd lay still on a makeshift bed of towels, watching her with those intelligent amber eyes as she cleaned the blood from his coat. Most of it wasn't his, she realized with relief. The few cuts he did have were shallow, defensive wounds that spoke of a struggle. "You're a good boy," she murmured, dabbing antiseptic on a gash near his shoulder. Hawker didn't flinch. He stayed perfectly still, like he was used to being treated for injuries. Another sign of his training. The door creaked open, and Dr. Pike slipped inside. His face was drawn with worry. "Tamsin, we need to talk about this." "I know what you're going to say," she said, continuing to clean Hawker's wounds. "But I couldn't let them take him. Something's not right here." "That's exactly why this is dangerous." Dr. Pike removed his glasses, cleaning them nervously with his shirt. "Sheriff Merritt was just in my office. He's demanding our security footage, saying it's evidence in an ongoing investigation." Tamsin's hands stilled. "Evidence of what? A scared kid and a dog trying to help him?" "I don't know. But what I do know is that harboring this dog could cost you your job. Cost us both our jobs." He looked at Hawker, who was watching him with steady eyes. "Though I have to admit, this is no ordinary stray. Look at how he positions himself." Tamsin had noticed it, too. Hawker maintained perfect form, even at rest. When she gave him basic commands to test his training, he responded with military precision. This was a dog with years of professional handling behind him. "He reminds me of my mom's search and rescue dogs," she said softly. "The way he moves, how he reads a room. Someone invested a lot of time in his training." A knock at the door made them both jump. Tamsin relaxed slightly when she saw Deputy Silas Brome's weathered face. The deputy slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind him. "Thought I might find you here," he said, his gray eyes taking in the scene. Unlike his boss, Brome had always struck Tamsin as a decent man, trapped in an increasingly difficult position. "Are you here to report us?" Dr. Pike asked warily. Brome shook his head. "No. I'm here because something about this whole situation doesn't add up." He crouched down, letting Hawker sniff his hand. The dog accepted his presence, but stayed close to Tamsin. "That boy, Elias, he's at County General. Drifted in and out of consciousness during transport. Said something about expired patches and a recovery clinic." Tamsin's mind raced back to the fentanyl patches they'd found clutched in Elias's hands. The ones we found had a clinic's logo on them. What if... She hesitated, the implications falling into place. What if he wasn't stealing them? What if he was trying to expose something? A recovery clinic dealing in expired medication would be quite a scandal, Dr. Pike mused, especially if those medications were being diverted instead of destroyed. "It would explain the zip ties," Brome said grimly, "and why Merritt's so interested in containing this situation quickly." Hawker's ears pricked forward at the mention of the clinic. Tamsin watched him closely, remembering how the dog had protected Elias. He must have worked there too. Security, maybe? That would explain his training. And why someone would want him eliminated along with any other evidence, Brome added. He stood up, his face troubled. "Listen, I can't be seen here long, but watch yourselves. Merritt's pushing hard on this one, harder than a simple theft case warrants." After Brome left, Tamsin sat with Hawker, her hand resting on his broad head. The dog leaned into her touch, offering comfort even as her world grew more complicated. She thought about Elias, barely more than a kid, risking everything to expose something wrong. About Hawker, choosing to protect rather than follow corrupt orders. "We can't keep him here indefinitely," Dr. Pike said softly. "Merritt will search the clinic eventually." "I know." Tamsin scratched behind Hawker's ears, feeling the raised scar of his handler's mark. But right now, he and that boy might be the only ones who know the whole truth, and someone's willing to hurt them both to keep it quiet. Dr. Pike sighed heavily. "Just be careful, Tamsin. Whatever's going on here, it's bigger than a dog and some stolen medication." He headed for the door, then paused. "I'll stall on the security footage as long as I can. Buy you some time to figure things out." Tamsin nodded gratefully. As the door closed behind him, she looked down at Hawker. The shepherd's eyes met hers, full of trust and determination. Whatever storm was coming, they would face it together. The morning sun had barely touched the clinic windows when Sheriff Merritt burst through the front doors, 2 deputies flanking. "Him!" His polished boots squeaked against the freshly mopped floor as he stormed toward the treatment area where Tamsin was organizing supplies. "Miss Doyle," he barked, his face flushed with anger. "You're interfering with an active investigation. That dog is evidence in a criminal case, and you're going to hand it over. Now." Tamsin's hands trembled slightly, but she squared her shoulders. "The dog saved Elias's life. He's not evidence. He's a victim. That's not your call to make." Merritt's hand rested meaningfully on his holstered weapon. "Where is it?" Tamsin corrected firmly. "And he's safe." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "This is obstruction, plain and simple. I could arrest you right now." "For what? Protecting an animal from being destroyed before we even know what happened?" Tamsin felt her voice growing stronger. "That boy was zip-tied and beaten. The dog was trying to help him." "That boy is a thief who stole controlled substances." Merritt stepped closer, using his height to intimidate. "Last chance. Where's the dog?" "No." The word came out quiet but firm. The standoff stretched for several tense seconds. Merritt's face darkened. "Fine. We'll do this the hard way." He turned to his deputies. "Search every room. That mutt's here somewhere." For the next hour, Tamsin watched helplessly as they tore through the clinic, checking kennels and storage areas. But Hawker was well hidden in a rarely used isolation room she'd prepared. And they found nothing. "This isn't over," Merritt growled as he finally left. "You're making a big mistake, girl." Later that night, Tamsin met Deputy Brome behind the old feed store, her heart still racing from the morning's confrontation. The deputy's face was grim in the shadows. "You've stirred up a hornet's nest," he said quietly. "Merritt's not acting alone. He's tied to Guthrie Vale." "Who's that?" "Owns a chain of pain recovery clinics. Very wealthy, very connected. The kind of man who makes problems disappear." Silas glanced around before continuing. "I've been watching him for months. Something's not right with those clinics, but I can't prove it." Tamsin thought about the fentanyl patches they'd found on Elias. The boy worked at one of Vale's clinics. He was supposed to dispose of expired medications. "Perfect cover for a diversion operation," Silas nodded. "Expired meds that supposedly get destroyed could be worth a fortune on the street." Back at the clinic, Tamsin worked late, studying Hawker. The shepherd responded to complex hand signals she'd never given him, following scent patterns with practiced precision. His behavior reminded her more and more of the search and rescue dogs her mother had trained. She ran him through basic rescue scenarios, amazed at his responses. When she mimicked distress, he immediately began tracking patterns. When she scattered items with different scents, He identified and categorized them methodically. "You were trained for more than just security, weren't you?" she murmured, watching him work. The pieces were starting to align. Vale's clinics, Elias's job disposing of medications, Hawker's specialized training. This was bigger than simple theft. The next morning, Silas returned to the clinic early before his shift. Tamsin shared her observations about Hawker's training. "He's not just a guard dog," she explained. "He's been trained to find specific substances, like the search and rescue dogs use different signals for different scents. What if he was used to track their shipments?" Silas considered this. A trained dog would be invaluable for a drug operation, checking products, securing routes. He met her eyes seriously. "We need proof, real evidence that connects Vale to the diverted medications." "Elias tried to get that proof," Tamsin said softly. "And look what happened to him. Which is why we need to be smarter about it." Silas's gray eyes were determined. "I can protect you, Tamsin, but only if we do this right. Are you sure you want to take this on? There's no shame in walking away." Tamsin looked at Hawker, remembering the battered teenager he'd fought to protect. She thought about her mother, who had always taught her that doing the right thing mattered more than doing the easy thing. "I'm sure," she said firmly. "Whatever Vale's doing, however merit's involved, people are getting hurt. Someone has to stop it." Silas nodded slowly. "Then we do this together, but carefully. Vale's got money and influence. He won't go down easily." "Neither will we," Tamsin replied, resting her hand on Hawker's solid presence beside her. The shepherd's muscles were tense, alert, as if he understood the gravity of their decision. She had chosen her path now, not just hiding a dog or protecting a witness, but actively fighting against whatever corrupt network had hurt Elias and tried to eliminate Hawker. It was dangerous, probably foolish, but she knew it was right. The morning light strengthened outside the windows as they began to plan their next moves. There would be no going back now, but Tamsin felt stronger knowing she wasn't fighting alone. Tamsin knew they needed hard evidence. That's what led her to Ned Culver's garage on the outskirts of town, where the retired firefighter kept a makeshift workshop filled with tools and spare parts. His weathered hands worked methodically on the dented pickup truck's dashboard, carefully extracting the camera unit. "These newer models, they record everything," Ned explained, his gray beard catching the workshop's fluorescent light. "Most folks don't even know they've got one built in." His fingers, still nimble despite years of firefighting, connected cables to his laptop. Silas stood watch near the door while Tamsin and Hawker stayed close to Ned. The German shepherd hadn't left her side since they'd arrived, his amber eyes constantly scanning the garage's shadows. "There we go," Ned muttered, typing commands. "Let's see what we've got." Tanto, grainy footage flickered to life on his screen. They watched as Elias's truck drove through the rain-slicked night, headlights cutting through the darkness. Suddenly, a black SUV appeared behind him, its high beams blazing. Tamsin's breath caught as two masked figures emerged from the SUV, their faces hidden, but their intentions clear. The larger one carried what looked like a metal pipe. "They weren't trying to stop him," she whispered. "They were trying to kill him." The footage showed the SUV ramming Elias's truck repeatedly, forcing him towards the drainage ditch. When he managed to keep control, the masked men grew more aggressive. The camera captured every brutal impact until the final crash that had sent Elias fleeing toward the clinic with Hawker. "Those weren't amateur thugs," Silas observed, his voice tight. "That was a professional hit." Ned's face had grown grim. "Vale's got his fingers in everything around here. Construction, real estate, those fancy recovery clinics of his. Man like that, with that much power? He thinks he can get away with anything," Tamsin finished. She scratched behind Hawker's ears, drawing comfort from his solid presence. But not this time. A car engine growled past outside, making them all freeze. Through the dusty window, they saw Sheriff Merritt's patrol car crawling by, its spotlight sweeping across the building's facade. "That's no routine patrol," Silas said quietly. "Someone tipped him off." Hawker's hackles rose, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The shepherd positioned himself between Tamsin and the door, his training evident in every tense muscle. "We need to get this footage somewhere safe," Ned declared, already downloading the video files. "My place isn't secure enough anymore." "I know somewhere," Silas offered. "An old hunting cabin my grandfather left me. It's off the grid, no one knows about it." Ned nodded approvingly. "Smart. Vale's got eyes everywhere in town, but even he can't watch what he doesn't know exists." They carefully packed away the evidence, making copies to store in different locations. As they worked, Tamsin noticed Hawker growing increasingly alert, his attention fixed on the windows and doors. His protective instincts, already strong, seemed to be shifting into high gear. "He knows something's coming," she said, watching the shepherd's behavior. "He's been trained to recognize threats, and right now, everything about him is saying danger." "Dog's got good instincts," Ned agreed. "Remind me of the search and rescue shepherds we used to work with in the department. They could sense trouble before it happened." Tamsin felt a chill despite the warm evening. Vale's men knew exactly how to find Elias that night. They knew his route, his schedule. This isn't just about stolen medications anymore. "No," Silas confirmed grimly. "This is organized crime hiding behind legitimate businesses. The pain clinics, the expired medications, the distribution network, it's all connected." Another police cruiser rolled past, slower this time. Hawker's muscles bunched, ready to spring into action if needed. His dedication to protecting Tamsin had only grown stronger since that first night, as if he sensed the growing danger around them. "They know we're getting close," Tamsin said softly, watching the patrol car's taillights disappear around the corner. "They know we have something." Ned's expression hardened with determination. "Then we'd better make sure this evidence stays safe until we can use it." He handed Silas a sealed envelope containing one copy of the footage. "You get this to your cabin. I'll take another copy somewhere else. Better not to keep all our eggs in one basket." As they prepared to leave separately to avoid attention, Tamsin felt the weight of their discovery settling on her shoulders. They had proof now, real, undeniable evidence of Vale's criminal activities. But that proof made them targets, and Vale's reach seemed to extend into every corner of West Hollow. Hawker pressed against her leg, his presence both reassuring and protective. His training had prepared him for precisely this kind of situation, and Tamsin was grateful for his unwavering loyalty. Whatever came next, she knew the shepherd would be ready. They split up carefully, taking different routes home. As Tamsin drove back to the clinic with Hawker, she noticed more patrol cars than usual on the streets. Message received, she thought grimly. Vale was letting them know they were being watched. But they had something Vale didn't know about, concrete proof of his crimes. And as long as they could protect that evidence and each other, they had a chance to bring his whole operation crashing down. The old wall clock in the clinic's break room struck midnight, its soft chimes echoing through the quiet building. Tamsin had dozed off in her chair after her evening rounds, exhausted from the day's revelations. Hawker lay at her feet, his chin resting on his paws but his ears still alert. The first wisps of smoke curled under the door so subtly that even Hawker didn't immediately react. But within seconds, the shepherd's head snapped up, nostrils flaring. He barked sharply, the sound jerking Tamsin awake. The acrid smell hit her instantly. "Fire!" she gasped, stumbling to her feet. Orange flames were already licking up the hallway walls, spreading with unnatural speed. This was no accident. The blaze moved with deliberate purpose, cutting off their escape routes. Tamsin's first thought was of the animals. The kennels! She pushed through the thickening smoke, Hawker pressed against her leg. The heat was intense, making her eyes water as she fought her way down the corridor. Behind her, support beams groaned ominously. The kennel area was filling with smoke fast. Coughing violently, Tamsin fumbled with the first cage lock. Her fingers felt clumsy, the metal hot against her skin. One dog free, then another. The animals bolted past her, toward the building's front exit, guided by survival instinct. A thunderous crack split the air. Tamsin looked up to see the ceiling buckling above her. She lunged forward just as a burning beam crashed down, blocking the way she'd come. The impact sent sparks showering around her, igniting smaller fires wherever they landed. "Help!" she screamed, but her voice was lost in the roar of the flames. The smoke was getting thicker, making each breath harder than the last. She dropped to her knees, trying to find cleaner air near the floor. The heat pressed in from all sides, suffocating. Hawker barked urgently, pushing at her shoulder. Through watering eyes, she saw him working at something. The side maintenance latch of the kennel area, a small access panel used for cleaning. The shepherd's powerful jaws clamped onto the mechanism, pulling with trained precision. The latch gave way with a metallic snap. Hawker shouldered the panel open, creating a narrow escape route. Tamsin crawled toward it, her lungs burning. The opening was tight, but it was their only chance. She pushed through, feeling the rough edges scrape her arms. Just as she cleared the panel, another beam collapsed behind them. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Hawker grabbed her sleeve in his teeth, pulling her forward as her strength began to fade. Her vision was going dark at the edges, the smoke too thick to process clear thoughts. "Tamsin!" A familiar voice cut through the chaos. "This way!" Rough hands grabbed her shoulders, dragging her the rest of the way out. Cool night air hit her face, sweet and precious. She gulped it desperately between coughing fits, aware of Hawker's solid presence still beside her. "Easy now," Ned's gruff voice soothed as he and Silas moved her further from the burning building. "We've got you." Silas supported her weight while Ned checked her over for injuries. "Someone called it in," the deputy said grimly. "Said they saw suspicious activity around the clinic. We got here as fast as we could." The clinic was fully engulfed now, flames reaching into the night sky. Fire trucks wailed in the distance, but Tamsin knew they'd be too late to save anything inside. All their records, the security footage backup, any potential evidence, it would all be ash. "This is Vale," she rasped, her throat raw from smoke. "Sending us a message." "More like trying to silence us completely," Ned growled. "If Hawker hadn't woken you up?" The shepherd pressed close, licking Tamsin's hand. She buried her fingers in his fur, drawing strength from his unwavering loyalty. He had saved her life again, just as he'd saved Elias that first night. Silas's face was hard with anger as he watched the clinic burn. "Vale's getting desperate. He knows we have proof of what he did to Elias, what he's been doing with those clinics of his. And now he's escalated to attempted murder," Ned added darkly. Tamsin struggled to her feet, leaning on Hawker for support. Her legs shook, but her voice was steady as she said, "He thinks this will stop us. That destroying evidence will make us back down." She looked at the burning building, thinking of Elias's battered face, of the dashcam footage showing Vale's men trying to kill him. "But all it's done is prove how far they'll go to hide the truth." The fire trucks arrived, sirens piercing the night. As firefighters battled the blaze, Tamsin watched years of work and memories turn to ash. But instead of fear, She felt a steely resolve hardening in her chest. Elias had risked everything to expose Vale's operation. He had trusted her and Hawker to help him. She wouldn't let that trust be in vain. "We finish this," she declared, her voice hoarse but determined. "For Elias, for everyone Vale's hurt. We use what we know to bring him down." Hawker's muscles tensed beneath her hand, as if the shepherd understood and agreed. He had been trained for this kind of fight, and now Tamsin understood why. Together they would see justice done, no matter the cost. The morning after the fire, Tamsin sat on a hay bale in Ned's weathered barn, her fingers absently running through Hawker's fur. The German shepherd hadn't left her side since the fire, maintaining his protective vigil. Sunlight filtered through the dusty windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. "You should get some rest," Ned said, setting down a steaming mug of coffee beside her. The retired firefighter had insisted she stay at his place, away from prying eyes. "I can't," Tamsin replied, studying Hawker's focused behavior. Something had been nagging at her since the fire, the way he'd known exactly how to work the maintenance latch, his precise rescue movements. "There's something familiar about his training. I've seen these patterns before." She watched as Hawker responded to subtle hand signals, moving with practiced efficiency. The realization hit her like a physical blow. "Mom's unit. He moves just like her search and rescue dogs." Ned's expression softened at the mention of her mother. "Sarah was the best handler this county ever had." "After she died," Tamsin continued, her voice catching, "I lost track of her dogs. The bank took everything, including the training equipment." She stood up, suddenly energized. "Ned, do you still have those old incident reports? The ones with the K9 unit records?" The retired firefighter nodded slowly. "In the storage room. Never could bring myself to throw them out." They spent the next hour digging through dusty boxes, Hawker watching intently from his post by the door. Finally, Tamsin pulled out a thick folder labeled K9 Unit Records, 2010 through 2015. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were training logs, deployment records, and, most importantly, documentation of what happened to the dogs after her mother's death. She spread the papers across Ned's kitchen table, scanning through years of history. "Here," she whispered, pointing to an auction notice. "Mom's dogs were sold at a county liquidation sale." Her finger traced down the list of buyers. "Wait, these companies. Cornerstone Assets, Meridian Holdings?" She looked up at Ned. "They're all shell corporations. Silas showed me the connections. They all lead back to Vale." Ned leaned in, squinting at the yellowed paper. "You think Vale bought your mother's search and rescue dogs? Not just bought them?" Tamsin's mind raced as pieces clicked into place. "Retrained them. Look at Hawker's handler scar. It's recent, but he still remembers his original training. That's why he responds to the old commands." She turned to the shepherd, who met her gaze with intelligent amber eyes. "You weren't just running with Elias by chance, were you? You recognized my scent. You knew who I was." Hawker's tail thumped once against the floor, a soft whine escaping his throat. Tamsin's vision blurred with tears as she knelt beside him. "You found me. After all these years, you found me." The shepherd pressed his head against her chest, and she wrapped her arms around his thick neck. "Vale tried to turn you into something else, but you remembered. You remembered everything." Ned cleared his throat, emotion making his voice rougher than usual. "Sarah would be proud, seeing you two together, like her legacy found its way home." Tamsin wiped her eyes, studying the documents with renewed purpose. "Mom always said her dogs could sense truth. That's what made them such good rescue animals. They could find people who needed saving." She looked at Hawker with fresh understanding. That's what you did with Elias, isn't it? You knew he needed help. The revelation filled her with a fierce kind of joy. Vale hadn't just stolen her mother's dogs. He'd tried to corrupt their training, their purpose. But Hawker had resisted. He'd protected Elias, found Tamsin, and now stood ready to help expose the truth. Mom's last case, Tamsin said suddenly, rifling through the papers. She was investigating something before her accident. She never told me what it was, but she pulled out a partially redacted report. Look at these dates. 3 weeks before she died, her unit was called to search an area near one of Vale's first clinics. Ned frowned. You think there's a connection? I think Mom might have discovered something Vale didn't want found. Tamsin's hand tightened in Hawker's fur. And now her dog has led us right back to him. The shepherd's posture changed subtly, becoming more alert. His training was still there, waiting to be used for its original purpose, saving lives, uncovering truth. Tamsin felt the weight of her mother's legacy settling around her shoulders, not as a burden, but as armor. Vale tried to bury the evidence in flames, she said, gathering the documents carefully. But he forgot about this. About you. She cupped Hawker's face in her hands, seeing in his steady gaze the echo of her mother's determination. You're not just a survivor, boy. You're a message, a reminder that some things can't be corrupted. Hawker pressed closer, as if sealing a pact between them. In that moment, Tamsin felt her mother's presence more strongly than she had in years. The path ahead was dangerous, but she wasn't walking it alone. She had her mother's last guardian beside her, a living link to the work Sarah Doyle had died trying to complete. Time to finish what Mom started, Tamsin whispered, and Hawker's tail wagged once in solemn agreement. The old grain elevator loomed against the twilight sky, its rusty metal sides creaking in the wind. Hawker led them along a path through tall weeds, his nose working the ground with practiced precision. Tamsin followed close behind, with Silas and Ned flanking her sides. Property records show this place belongs to Meridian Holdings, Silas whispered, consulting his phone. Same shell company that bought your mother's dogs. Tamsin watched Hawker's body language change as they approached a side door. His muscles tensed, tail straight, the posture he used when indicating a target. He's got something. Ned moved forward with a small toolkit. Let me handle this lock. Years of emergency response teach you a few tricks. His weathered hands worked quickly, and the door clicked open with minimal noise. The interior was pitch black. Silas pulled out 3 flashlights, handing them around. Stay close. Watch for security systems. Their beams cut through darkness, revealing rusted machinery and decades of dust. But as they followed Hawker deeper inside, modern additions became apparent. New padlocks, fresh tire tracks in the grime, recent footprints. Look, Tamsin whispered, pointing to a metal staircase leading up. Those steps have been cleaned. Hawker took the lead, climbing silently. At the top landing, he stopped, nose twitching. A heavy metal door stood ajar, revealing what had once been an office space. Dear Lord, Ned breathed as they entered. The room was filled with organized chaos. Stacks of boxes lined the walls, each filled with pill bottles and patches. A desk held multiple laptops and ledgers. But most damning was the cork board covered in shipping schedules and payment records. Silas pulled on latex gloves and began photographing everything. This is it. Expired medications being repackaged, fake prescriptions, money trails. He held up a burner phone. Call logs to numbers I recognize, including Merritt's private line. Tamsin moved to the corkboard, studying dates and locations. These shipping routes, They match perfectly with what Elias must have discovered. Her throat tightened. The poor kid was right all along. Ned stood guard by the door while they gathered evidence. "Don't touch more than necessary. We want this to hold up in court." For 30 tense minutes, they documented everything. Silas used a secure connection to transmit the photos and files to state, investigators he trusted. "This is enough to bring down Vale's entire operation. The DEA will be all over this by morning." Relief flooded through Tamsin as they carefully retreated, erasing signs of their presence. Outside, the night air felt cleaner somehow. They'd done it. They'd found proof that would expose Vale's crimes and vindicate Elias. Back at Ned's barn, they allowed themselves to celebrate quietly. Silas made calls to his contacts, confirming the evidence was being processed. Ned poured small glasses of whiskey, toasting their success. "To justice," he said gruffly, "and to Sarah's legacy." Tamsin smiled, watching Hawker patrol the barn's perimeter. "We couldn't have done it without him. He led us right to Vale's storage facility." "The state boys will move fast," Silas assured them. "Vale and Merritt won't see it coming. By this time tomorrow, they'll both be in custody." Tamsin let herself imagine it. Peace returning to West Hollow, Elias recovering with his name cleared, Vale facing consequences for his crimes. After weeks of fear and hiding, it felt almost too good to be true. She moved to check on Hawker, finding him rigid and alert near the barn door. His ears were forward, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "What is it, boy?" She knelt beside him, but he wouldn't relax. His eyes stayed fixed on the shadows beyond the door, as if seeing something she couldn't. "Hawker?" She tried the hand signal for all clear, but he ignored it. The shepherd's unease sent a chill down her spine, despite their apparent victory. Silas noticed their interaction. "Everything okay?" "I'm not sure." Tamsin watched Hawker continue his vigilant guard. "He's acting like there's still danger." "Maybe just leftover tension from tonight," Ned suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. Tamsin wanted to believe that was all it was. They had the evidence. Help was coming. This should be over. But Hawker's growl deepened as headlights swept past on the distant road. His body trembled with contained energy, every muscle ready for action. Whatever training Vale's people had tried to impose on him, his core instincts remained true. If Hawker sensed a threat, Tamsin knew better than to ignore it. She joined him at the door, peering into the darkness. Their victory felt suddenly fragile, like a soap bubble ready to burst. Hawker pressed against her leg, his message clear. The night wasn't over. Whatever shadows he saw, whatever danger he sensed, it was still out there, waiting. Silas and Ned fell quiet, sensing the shift in mood. They'd won this round, exposed Vale's operation. But Hawker's continued unease suggested their celebration might be premature. The shepherd kept his guard, watching the darkness with unwavering focus, ready for whatever might emerge from those shadows. The hospital corridor lights flickered as Tamsin made her way to Elias's room. Something felt wrong. The night nurse's station sat empty, papers scattered across the desk. Ursuam, footsteps quickened. Room 214 stood open, sheets tangled and IV lines dangling. No Elias. "Help!" she shouted, spinning around. "Someone!" A cloth pressed against her face from behind. Sweet, chemical smell. Her vision blurred as strong arms dragged her backward. She fought, but darkness swallowed her whole. Cold water shocked her awake. Tamsin blinked against harsh floodlights, finding herself bound to a metal chair. Limestone walls towered around her, Vale's quarry on the outskirts of town. Her wrists burned from rope ties. Finally joining us. Guthrie Vale stepped into view, impeccable in his tailored suit despite the dusty setting. 2 armed men flanked him. Behind them, Sheriff Merritt stood with his service weapon drawn, face tight. "Where's Elias?" Tamsin's voice rasped. "Somewhere safe," Vale smiled without warmth. "Unlike your current situation." A whine made her heart stop. Hawker lay muzzled nearby, one of Vale's men keeping him restrained with a catch-pole. The shepherd's eyes never left Tamsin. "Remarkable animal," Vale mused. "My handlers tried for months to break his original training. Yet somehow he remembered you." He nodded to the man with the catch-pole. "Kill the dog first. Let her watch." "No!" Tamsin thrashed against her bonds. The ropes bit deeper. "You should have stayed out of it," Merritt growled. "Some things in this town aren't meant to be questioned." Headlights swept the quarry entrance. A patrol car approached slowly, kicking up limestone dust. "Ah," Vale's smile widened. "Right on schedule." The cruiser stopped. Deputy Silas Brome stepped out, hands raised. "Let them go, Vale. State investigators are already moving in." "Are they?" Vale seemed amused. "Shame about that evidence you transmitted. Amazing how unreliable technology can be." He gestured to his men. "Take care of our conscientious deputy." Tamsin's fingers worked frantically. The small blade she kept strapped to her ankle was still there. They hadn't searched her thoroughly enough. She remembered her mother's voice from years ago. "Always have a backup plan, baby girl, and trust your partner." The zip tie around her ankles gave way. As Vale's men moved toward Silas, she whistled 3 sharp notes, her mother's emergency recall signal. Hawker exploded into action. He twisted free of the catch-pole, ripping the muzzle off. The first gunman spun, firing wildly. Limestone dust billowed as bullets sparked off rock. Silas dove behind his cruiser, returning fire. Merritt hesitated, gun wavering between Vale's men and his deputy. Tamsin rolled as Hawker slammed into the second gunman. A bullet grazed the shepherd's flank, drawing blood, but he didn't slow. His jaws locked onto the man's arm, driving him to the ground. The gun clattered away. Vale scrambled backward, reaching for a weapon, but Hawker was faster. The shepherd's powerful body hit Vale full force, sending them both sprawling. Vale's head cracked against limestone, with a sickening thud. "Drop it!" Silas shouted. He had Merritt in his sights now. "It's over, Boyd." The sheriff's shoulders slumped. His gun lowered slowly. Hawker stood guard over Vale's unconscious form, blood matting his fur where the bullet had grazed him. But his tail wagged once when Tamsin approached. "Good boy," she whispered, hands shaking as she checked his wound. "Such a good, brave boy." The quarry filled with red and blue lights as backup finally arrived. State police swarmed in, securing the scene. Somewhere in the chaos, Tamsin heard that Elias had been found alive. Silas approached, holstering his weapon. "You okay?" Tamsin nodded, still holding Hawker close. The shepherd leaned against her, solid and warm and alive. Together they watched as Vale and Merritt were led away in handcuffs, their power stripped away in the harsh floodlights. More sirens wailed in the distance. The nightmare wasn't quite over, but dawn was breaking over the quarry walls. And Hawker stood ready beside her, guardian and partner, prepared for whatever came next. In the chaos of gunfire and limestone dust, Silas moved with practiced precision. While Hawker had Vale's gunman pinned, the deputy circled behind Sheriff Merritt, who was still torn between loyalties. "It's done, Boyd," Silas said firmly, weapon trained on his superior. "Drop the gun." Merritt's face twisted with rage and shame. He spun, firing wild, but Silas was faster. The deputy's tackle sent them both rolling across gravel. They grappled desperately, Merritt's greater bulk against Silas's younger strength. With a swift strike, Silas knocked the sheriff's gun away and pinned him face down. "You threw it all away," Silas grunted, snapping handcuffs onto Merritt's wrists. For what? Vale's blood money? Meanwhile, Tamsin spotted Vale scrambling toward his pickup truck. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Sometimes the hardest choice is the right one. She sprinted to the truck, jumping into the driver's seat. The key was still in the ignition. With a roar of the engine, she accelerated, not to escape, but to end this. Vale stumbled at the quarry's edge as she swung the truck around, trapping his legs against the limestone wall. He screamed in pain and fury. Tamsin climbed out, trembling but determined. Vale was trapped, helpless. It would be so easy to push him those final few feet over the edge. After everything he'd done, the drugs, the corruption, trying to kill Elias, trying to murder Hawker. "Do it," Vale spat blood. "Show everyone what you really are." Instead, Tamsin pulled her zip ties tight around his wrists. "I'm my mother's daughter," she said quietly, "and she taught me better than that." Red and blue lights flooded the quarry as state police vehicles poured in. Hawker limped to her side, fur matted with blood but tail held high. She buried her face in his neck, breathing in his familiar scent as the chaos of arrests swirled around them. The weeks that followed passed in a blur of depositions and headlines. Vale's network crumbled as evidence mounted. The pain clinic empire that had fed addiction and death throughout West Hollow collapsed. When the sentencing came down, 20 years without parole, Vale's polished facade finally cracked. Merritt resigned in disgrace before the investigation could force him out. His betrayal of the badge cut deep in the community, but it opened the door for real change in the department. Tamsin found her new normal slowly. The animal clinic rebuilt, with Elias taking a part-time job there during his recovery. His haunted eyes began to show life again as he worked with the animals, especially Hawker. The shepherd's bullet graze healed to a proud scar, and the county officially released him into Tamsin's care. She threw herself into search and rescue training, working with Hawker daily. His previous training made him a natural, and together they learned the discipline her mother had loved so much. During their first successful find, locating a lost hiker in the hill country, Tamsin felt her mother's presence so strongly she could barely breathe. Through it all, Silas was there. He brought coffee during long training sessions, helped repair the clinic's new security system, and simply listened when the nightmares came. Their friendship deepened naturally, built on shared trauma and healing. The first time he kissed her, after Hawker led them through a particularly challenging wilderness drill, it felt like coming home. "You know," he said one evening, watching Hawker run practice patterns in the sunset, "your mother would be proud, not just of the SAR work, but of how you handled everything. Choosing justice over vengeance, that takes real courage." Tamsin leaned against him, Hawker's training whistle warm in her palm. "We all have choices," she said softly. "Sometimes the hardest ones lead us exactly where we're meant to be." Thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us who we are. If something touched your heart, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with another story that just might stay with you.